September 1st, 1939. At precisely 4:45 a.m., a thunderous roar shattered the dawn over Poland. In that moment, the world irrevocably changed. What began as a local conflict rapidly spiraled into the deadliest war humanity has ever known. A war fueled by ambition, ideology, and a profound failure to learn from history. This is the story of World War II, a conflict that claimed over 80 million lives and reshaped the very fabric of our civilization. To understand the inferno, we must first look at the smoldering embers. The Great War, or World War I, ended in 1918, leaving Europe scarred and exhausted. The victors, seeking to prevent future aggression, imposed a Treaty of Versailles upon a defeated Germany. This treaty, intended to ensure peace, inadvertently sowed the seeds of future conflict. The Treaty of Versailles was brutal. Germany was forced to accept full responsibility for the war, pay colossal reparations, surrender vast territories, and severely limit its military. This humiliation, coupled with crippling economic depression, created a fertile ground for radical ideas. A deep-seated resentment festered within the German populace, a hunger for national pride and vengeance. Into this volatile landscape stepped a charismatic yet deeply dangerous figure, Adolf Hitler. A decorated veteran of the Great War, Hitler masterfully exploited Germany's grievances. He promised to restore Germany's honor, rebuild its military, and forge a greater German Reich. His Nazi party, with its extremist ideology of racial purity and Lebensraum, living space, gained terrifying momentum. Hitler's rise and early aggressions. By 1933, Hitler was Chancellor. He swiftly dismantled democratic institutions, silenced opposition, and began a rapid, clandestine rearmament program, openly defying the Treaty of Versailles. The world watched, largely with apprehension, but little decisive action. Hitler's early aggressions were met with a policy of appeasement. Leaders, desperate to avoid another catastrophic war, hoped that by ceding to his demands, peace could be maintained. The Munich Agreement of 1938, which surrendered Czechoslovakia's Sudetenland to Germany, epitomized this tragic miscalculation. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain famously declared peace for our time. He was gravely mistaken. With his western flank seemingly secure, Hitler turned his gaze east towards Poland. But before striking, he made a cynical pact with his ideological enemy, the Soviet Union. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, signed in August 1939, was a non-aggression agreement that secretly divided Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, including Poland. It paved the way for the inevitable. All that remained was the spark. That spark ignited on September 1st, 1939. The invasion of Poland marked not just the beginning of a new chapter, but the terrifying opening act of a global tragedy. The world held its breath, and then the war began. Blitzkrieg, the lightning war. The world was about to witness a new kind of warfare. The Germans called it Blitzkrieg Lightning War. It wasn't just about strength. It was about speed, coordination, and terror. Radio-linked tanks, motorized infantry, and devastating air support worked in a lethal symphony that bypassed traditional defenses. Poland fell in weeks. Then, in the spring of 1940, Hitler turned his gaze west. Denmark and Norway were swallowed in days. The phony war was over. The nightmare had truly arrived. The fall of France and the Ardennes Gambit. The French and British relied on the Maginot Line, a massive chain of fortifications they believed no army could breach. But Hitler didn't attack the line. He went around it. In a brilliant and reckless move, German panzers tore through the impenetrable Ardennes forest. The Allied armies were cut off, trapped against the sea. In just 6 weeks, France, once the greatest land power in Europe, was forced to surrender in the very same railway carriage where Germany had signed the armistice of 1918. Hitler's revenge was complete. But amidst the catastrophe, a miracle was born. At the port of Dunkirk, over 330,000 British and French soldiers were stranded, sitting ducks for the Luftwaffe. Back in England, an SOS went out not just to the Navy, but to the people. Thousands of ordinary civilians, fishermen, bankers, and weekend sailors manned their little ships and sailed into a war zone. Under heavy fire, they brought their boys home. It was a defeat, yes, but a defeat that felt like a victory of the human spirit. The Battle of Britain. The lonely stand with France gone, Britain stood alone. Hitler expected a quick surrender, but he hadn't reckoned with Winston Churchill. "We shall never surrender," he roared. To invade Britain, Hitler first had to control the skies. The Battle of Britain began. For months, the RAF Royal Air Force fought a desperate duel against the German Luftwaffe. When Hitler couldn't break the pilots, he tried to break the people. He launched the Blitz, 57 consecutive nights of bombing London. Imagine the sound, the relentless drone of engines, the whistle of falling bombs, the smell of dust and smoke. People lived in the shadows of death, yet they woke up every morning, cleared the rubble, and went to work. This was their finest hour. In the end, Hitler's hubris failed him. The RAF, though outnumbered, held the line. For the first time, the Nazi machine had been stopped. Hitler realized a sea invasion was impossible for now. Frustrated and impatient, he made a decision that many historians believe was his greatest mistake. He turned his back on Britain and looked toward the east, toward the vast icy plains of the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa, the ultimate gamble. June 22, 1941. Hitler launched the largest military operation in human history. Operation Barbarossa. Over 3 million Axis soldiers, 3,000 tanks, and 2,000 aircraft surged across the Soviet border. Hitler viewed the East not just as land to be conquered, but as a space to be cleansed for the German race. He predicted the Soviet Union would collapse like a house of cards in weeks. At first, he seemed right. Hundreds of thousands of Red Army soldiers were captured in massive pockets. The road to Moscow appeared open, the Russian winter and scorched earth. But the Soviet Union was not a house of cards. It was an ocean. As the Red Army retreated, they followed a scorched earth policy destroying crops, bridges, and factories so the Germans could find no food or shelter. Then, the most powerful ally of the Russians arrived, General Winter. Temperatures plummeted to minus 40 degrees. German oil froze in the tanks. Soldiers suffered from frostbite. For the first time, the Blitzkrieg ground to a halt at the very gates of Moscow. While the armies clashed, the people suffered. In the city of Leningrad, the Germans began a siege that would last nearly 900 days. It was a calculated attempt to starve a city of 3 million people to death. People ate wallpaper paste, leather shoes, and pets just to survive. One young girl, Tanya Savichava, kept a diary. Her entries were short. Grandma died. Uncle Vasya died. Mama died, everyone is dead. Only Tanya is left. Over 1 million civilians perished in that city, alone a testament to the war's unimaginable cruelty. The Pacific Theater, and the rising sun. While Europe burned, a different fire was consuming Asia. Imperial Japan, seeking resources and dominance, had invaded China years earlier. Now they set their sights on the oil-rich colonies of the West. But one obstacle stood in their way. The United States Pacific Fleet anchored at a place called Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, the day of infamy, December 7th, 1941, 7:48 a.m. A surprise airstrike by the Japanese Empire caught the Americans completely off guard. In just 2 hours, 2,403 Americans were killed, and much of the Pacific Fleet was crippled. The next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed a stunned nation, calling it a date which will live in infamy. Japan thought they had neutralized the U.S. In reality, they had done something far more dangerous. They had awakened a sleeping giant with a terrible resolve. The Global Alliance. Within days, Hitler, in a show of solidarity with Japan, declared war on the United States. It was his second fatal mistake. Now, the world's greatest industrial power was united with the British Empire and the Soviet Union. The Grand Alliance was formed. The tide was about to turn, but the path to victory would be paved with blood. Stalingrad, the graveyard of armies. By late 1942, the German war machine focused its entire weight on one city, Stalingrad. Named after the Soviet leader, it became a matter of prestige for both Hitler and Stalin. But this wasn't a battle of grand maneuvers. It was Rattenkrieg, Rat's War. Soldiers fought for individual bricks, for kitchens, for cellars. In the ruins of the tractor factory and the grain elevator, the average life expectancy of a new soldier was less than 24 hours. Factual overlay: total casualties at Stalingrad, approximately 2 million. The bloodiest battle in human history. The trap is sprung in November. The Soviets launched a massive pincer movement. They didn't hit the Germans directly. They crushed the weaker Romanian and Hungarian forces guarding the flanks. Within days, 250,000 German soldiers were surrounded. Hitler forbade surrender, promising air supplies that never arrived. Starving and frozen, the remnants of the Sixth Army finally laid down their arms in February 1943. The myth of German invincibility was buried in the Russian snow. North Africa and the Desert Fox, while Russia bled, a different kind of war raged in the deserts of North Africa. Here, the legendary German General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, had pushed the British to the brink of losing the Suez Canal, but at a small railway halt called El Alamein, the tide turned. Under General Montgomery, the British Desert Rats launched a massive artillery barrage that shattered the Axis line. Combined with American landings in Morocco, the Axis were finally kicked out of Africa. The soft underbelly of Europe, Italy, was now exposed. The turning tide in the Pacific. Midway, thousands of miles away, in the vast Pacific, the United States was looking for revenge. In June 1942, Japanese Admiral Yamamoto sought to draw the U.S. fleet into a final showdown at Midway Atoll, but American codebreakers had cracked the Japanese naval cipher. They knew exactly when and where the attack was coming. In just 6 minutes of carnage, American dive bombers sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. Japan's naval supremacy was gone in a single afternoon. The Long Island hopping campaign toward Tokyo had begun. Wars are won with tanks, but they are also won with math. At Bletchley Park, a team of geniuses led by Alan Turing worked in total secrecy to break Enigma, the supposedly unbreakable German code. Historians estimate that their work shortened the war by at least 2 years. These men and women never fired a shot, yet they saved millions of lives by allowing the Allies to know the enemy's next move before it was even made. The noose tightens by 1944, the Axis was in full retreat. The Soviet steamroller was pushing from the east, and the Allies were climbing up the Italian peninsula from the south. But Hitler's fortress Europe still stood. To win the war, the Allies had to do the impossible, an amphibious invasion of the heavily fortified French coast. The world waited for the Great Crusade. D-Day, the Great Crusade, June 6, 1944. D-Day. Operation Overlord. Under the supreme command of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Allies launched the largest amphibious invasion in history. 156,000 American, British, and Canadian troops landed on 5 beaches in Normandy. On Omaha Beach, it was a bloodbath. German machine guns on the cliffs turned the sand into a killing field. But the sheer bravery of ordinary men prevailed. They scaled the cliffs, silenced the bunkers, and carved out a foothold in Hitler's fortress, Europe. The wall had been breached. Liberation and the Bulge. Paris was liberated in August. The end seemed near. But Hitler had one final card to play. In the freezing December of 1944, he launched a massive counteroffensive through the Ardennes, creating a bulge in the Allied line. It was a desperate, bloody gamble in the snow. But at the town of Bastogne, American paratroopers held firm despite being surrounded. When the weather cleared and the Allied Air Force returned, the German army was broken for the last time. There were no more reserves left. The unveiling of the Holocaust as the Allies pushed into Germany from the west and the Soviets from the east, they stumbled upon a horror that defied human comprehension. The concentration camps, this was the final solution, the systematic, industrialized murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others. General Eisenhower, seeing the piles of corpses at Ohrdruf, ordered every soldier not on the front lines to visit the camps. He said, "We are told that the American soldier does not know what he is fighting for. Now at least he will know what he is fighting against." The fall of Berlin. By April 1945, the Soviet Red Army had reached the outskirts of Berlin. Stalin was determined to take the city as a trophy. The fighting was savage, a vengeful Soviet force against the remnants of the German army, including old men and boys of the Hitler Youth. Deep underground in his Fuhrerbunker, Adolf Hitler realized the end had come. On April 30th, as Russian shells exploded above him, the man who had set the world on fire committed suicide. 2 days later, Berlin surrendered. VE Day. Victory in Europe, May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe Day. The war in the West was over. The Nazi nightmare had ended in the ruins of the city where it began. But while Europe celebrated, the war was far from over. In the Pacific, the Japanese Empire remained defiant, prepared to fight to the very last man, woman, and child. The road to Tokyo. Island hopping. While Europe celebrated, the Pacific was a furnace of violence. The American strategy was island hopping, bypassing heavily fortified positions to seize strategic airfields. But the Japanese defenders followed a code of Bushido, no surrender. At Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the fighting reached a level of savagery that shocked even the most hardened veterans. On Okinawa alone, over 100,000 Japanese soldiers and thousands of civilians died, many by suicide rather than face capture. The Americans were winning, but the cost was terrifying. Military planners estimated that a full-scale invasion of the Japanese home islands could cost over 1 million American lives. The Manhattan Project and the impossible choice in the shadows, a secret race had been won. The Manhattan Project, the most expensive and complex scientific endeavor in history, had successfully split the atom. In July 1945, President Harry Truman, who had taken office after Roosevelt's death, was informed that the weapon was ready. He now faced an impossible choice: an invasion that would kill millions, or the use of a weapon so powerful it could wipe out an entire city in a single heartbeat. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, August 6, 1945. A B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay dropped Little Boy on Hiroshima. In an instant, 70,000 people vanished. 3 days later, Fat Man fell on Nagasaki. The world had entered the atomic age. The destruction was so absolute that Emperor Hirohito, breaking centuries of tradition, intervened. He realized that to continue the war was not just national suicide, but the extinction of human civilization. The surrender and VJ Day, September 2nd, 1945. On the deck of the battleship USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, the Second World War finally came to an end. After 6 years, 1 day, and tens of millions of deaths, the guns fell silent. The most destructive conflict in human history was over. The aftermath, a new world order, the world that emerged from the ashes, was unrecognizable. The old empires of Britain and France were crumbling. Two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, now stood face to face, beginning a Cold War that would last for decades. The Nuremberg trials established a new precedent, that just following orders was no excuse for crimes against humanity. The United Nations was born from the hope that such a catastrophe would never happen again. The cost of freedom, World War II, was a struggle for the soul of humanity. It showed us the darkest depths of our cruelty, but also the incredible heights of our courage. We remember the names of the generals and the dates of the battles, but we must never forget the ordinary people who gave their tomorrows for our today. The scars of this war are still with us, a reminder of the price of peace and the fragile nature of freedom.